Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nabilah Khaleeda dan ini Niaga AWANI. Kementerian Pelaburan, Perdagangan dan Industri MITI mengunjurkan nilai pelaburan yang diluluskan pada 2025 sebanyak RM104 bilion melibatkan sektor perkilangan dan perkhidmatan terpilih di bawah seliaan Lembaga Pembangunan Pelaburan Malaysia MAIDA. Kementerian itu berkata jangkaan berkenaan mengambil kira beberapa faktor seperti unjuran keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK, projek-projek yang sedang dalam penilaian dan projek-projek berpotensi. Berdasarkan rekod statistik pelaburan daripada MAIDA, jumlah pelaburan yang diluluskan bagi suku pertama 2025 bernilai RM89.8 bilion, peningkatan sebanyak 3.7% berbanding tempoh yang sama pada 2024. Sehubungan itu, melihat kepada trend permohonan pelaburan kepada MAIDA, unjuran pelaburan dijangka masih mengekalkan momentum positif untuk keseluruhan 2025. Perkara itu dinyatakan dalam jawapan bertulis yang disiarkan di portal Dewan Rakyat pada Rabu. MITI menjawab soalan Ahli Parlimen Kubang Pasu, Datuk Dr. Ku Abdul Rahman Ku Ismail yang ingin tahu unjuran nilai pelaburan bagi 2025 serta strategi dan langkah kerajaan untuk memastikan nilai ekspor dan nilai pelaburan tidak terjejas teruk disebabkan oleh tarif Amerika Syarikat dan geopolitik dunia yang tidak menentu. Pada masa ini, kementerian itu berkata unjuran berkenaan adalah kekal memandangkan pengenaan tarif berkenaan hanya terkesan kepada syarikat yang bergantung pada pasaran Amerika. MITI berkata pihaknya belum bercadang untuk menyimak semula sasaran pertumbuhan perdagangan untuk 2025 susulan pelaksanaan tarif timbal balik Amerika sebanyak 19% kepada ekspor barangan Malaysia ke negara itu baru-baru ini. Sehubungan itu, ia akan terus memantau perkembangan semasa, khususnya ekspor ke pasaran Amerika dan merangka strategi mitigasi yang bersesuaian. Sebelum ini, MITI telah mengunjurkan peningkatan sebanyak 5.0% dalam jumlah perdagangan negara kepada RM3.01 trilion berbanding RM2.87 trilion yang direkodkan pada 2024. Pengumuman terbaru oleh Presiden Trump mengenai kadar tarif sebanyak 19% telah membuka ruang strategik kepada Malaysia untuk terus berada dalam kedudukan yang kompetitif setara dengan rakan-rakan dagang lain terutamanya dalam kalangan negara-negara anggota ASEAN yang dikenakan kadar tarif hampir sama. Strategi dan inisiatif digariskan dalam rancangan Malaysia ke-13 berupaya mengukuhkan komitmen negara terhadap pembangunan mampan dan inklusif selaras dengan peranan Malaysia sebagai Presiden Perhimpunan UN Habitat. Menteri Perumahan dan Kerajaan Tempatan Ngah Kormi berkata, RMK-13 yang dibentangkan Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim Khamis lepas mencerminkan iltizam kerajaan perpaduan dalam rangka hala tuju pembangunan negara yang menyeluruh, mampan dan berdaya tahan demi kesejahteraan rakyat. Korming berkata, antara komponen utama yang diberi penekanan dalam RMK-13 adalah peluasan penggunaan sistem binaan berindustri IBS dan pemodelan maklumat bangunan BIM dalam sektor pembinaan. Pendekatan ini katanya bukan sahaja meningkatkan kecekapan dan kualiti kerja, malah menjimatkan kos, meminimumkan pembaziran serta mempercepat tempoh siap projek. Beliau berkata penggunaan IBS dan BIM mampu melonjakkan produktiviti dan mengurangkan pembaziran bahan binaan sekaligus menurunkan kos pembinaan khususnya bagi projek perumahan awam. Langkah ini katanya dapat menyokong sasaran kerajaan untuk membina 1 juta unit rumah mampu milik dalam tempoh 10 tahun selaras dengan komitmen Kementerian Perumahan dan Kerajaan Tempatan KPKT menyediakan kediaman berkualiti, selesa dan mampu dimiliki rakyat. Beliau berkata selaras aspirasi membangunkan bandar lebih terangkum, KPKT turut merangka strategi memperluas pelaksanaan pembangunan berorientasikan transit TOD. Dengan mengintegrasikan projek perumahan mampu milik dan sistem pengangkutan awam melalui konsep TOD, ia dapat memudahkan akses rakyat khususnya golongan B40 kepada peluang pendidikan dan pekerjaan. Kormi berkata KPKT juga akan meneruskan perancangan perumahan berasaskan fakta dan pemacu data melalui pembangunan repository maklumat perumahan bersepadu selain meneliti langkah mewajibkan pemaju menyerahkan hak milik strata semasa serahan milikan kosong bagi melindungi hak pembeli rumah. Beliau berkata kementeriannya turut komited membantu golongan miskin Tegar Bandar menerusi program pembinaan semula dan baik pulih rumah usang dengan 4,814 unit rumah dibaik pulih dan 245 unit rumah baru dibina pada 2023 dan 2024 membabitkan peruntukan RM104.4 juta. All right, let's move on to our next shape program where we talk about the RMK 13 and its sweeping impact on the property market. So from affordable housing targets to tax reforms, we want to know what does this mean for developers, investors and also everyday Malaysians. So joining us is surveyor Sulaiman Zahir, Director of Research and Consultancy Services at Rahim & Co International Berhad. So Sulaiman, let's begin with the big picture. So how is RMK 13 expected to shape the overall direction of Malaysia's property market?
Firstly, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. With regards to RMK 13 that was actually recently announced, the driver of the concept is to actually build on a fundamental level of the nation's capacity, capacity with regards to our productivity, capacity with regards to an equitable distribution of opportunities and wealth for the well-being of the rakyat, which is actually something that's very good. The growth that we see expected from RMK 13, there's quite a number of initiatives that are actually being announced, actually reinforced, which would actually tune the property market towards certain areas of interest. Well, one of it is actually the focus on the HG, high growth, high value sectors, which is actually one of the economic bases for the country, because we are still within the trap of that middle income situation where we need to actually elevate the productivity, enhance the income of our people, our rakyat, so that affordability can be actually improved on top of the cost consideration that needs to be addressed, which is also being put in together within RMK 13.
But one of the RMK 13's key goals is delivering 500,000 affordable homes, which by 2030. So do you think this is achievable, and what impact will it have on housing affordability and supply? Because, you know, the plan also includes amendments to the Strata Management and also Titles Acts. So how might these changes improve governance and also investors' confidence in stratified properties?
I have to actually refer to the agenda of Reformasi Perumahan, which is actually under the Malaysian government. The intention to actually push through or develop more affordable houses is commendable. It is something that is needed by the people, the rakyat of Malaysia, and it is something that's of high demand. The challenge is to actually how efficient is the system to actually make sure that the production of the 500,000 in the next 5 years or 1 million unit in the next 500,000 in the next 5 years or 1 million in the next 10 years can actually be attained. Because in the past, the total supply of residential units in the country has been hovering at about 150,000 a year. And that includes affordable segment as well as open market segment. So for us to actually attain the 500,000, it is quite a tall order, ambitious, but I guess we have to actually seek all the avenues to actually attain those. And some of the avenues that have actually been announced through the different government agencies to monetize or basically to utilize government assets through PPPs is actually one venture. And also to allow or push through the concept of the technologies like IBS, prefabricated materials, which has been on the agenda for the past few years. It's not something new. But I think for now, now more than ever, we really need to actually go through this properly to make it, formalize it in a way that's implementable, because cost implication, investment in such technologies would actually have to be amortized so that it is actually feasible. On top of that, because one of the challenges in the country is land is a state matter, and therefore the coordination between the federal government and the state government with all the respective agencies, be it at federal level or state level, they actually have to work together very closely, together with the developers, together with the professionals, consultants, to actually spurt out, or basically to actually spurt the growth of affordable houses within the market.
But Sulaiman, with infrastructure projects, also industrial growth being emphasized, which regions or property segments do you see gaining the most traction? And how is this plan, RK13, supporting this shift, and what does it mean for developers and also investors?
As mentioned earlier, one of the driving concept or the thrust within RK13 is building the capacity of the country to be more productive. And certain segments like the industrial, the high technology industries, there's a few that was actually mentioned, like Kigib, Kulim High Park. Kigib is actually in Korea, and there's all the other growth areas within the halal industries, electronics industries, semiconductors specifically. These areas would actually grow, and we need to capitalize the growth of these areas, and that needs to be coupled with the infrastructure that's being rolled out. We see the almost coming to completion of ECRL towards the East Coast region, which would actually help fortify the halal industries, food securities and food industries. That would be one area. In Penang, for example, with the public transportation master plan, Mutiara Line, and therefore the growth in Penang would also be spurred with this. And also we can see the ones in Johor through JSSEZ and all the RTS programs, the EART programs or development that's actually coming online would actually help push the growth of these regions.
Those are the area and also segments that will gain attraction when it comes to the property segment. So how might fiscal measures like the SSD expansion to 8% and policy reforms affecting commercial leasing and also construction costs? And will these dampen development momentum or shift strategies? Sulaiman?
We have to give credit where it's due with regards to the growth of the market. So far, after the pandemic, the market have actually been growing steadily with a commendable performance in 2024. But the market has actually slowed down in the first quarter, coming to the first half of the year. It has actually normalized somewhat. One of the with that, we think that there will be some friction, or basically some adjustments that's actually needed within the market to actually adapt to the new SSD expansion, which would actually impact the bottom lines. The SSD expansion for the 8% for commercial, non-residential, these are all for non-residential use purposes, commercial, industrials, hotel, all those kind of developments would actually be subject to the new expanded SSD together with the construction SSD of 6%, be it the threshold has actually been revised. However, this would still actually impact. Coupling that with the trajectory of the market right now, there will be an adjusted period that we foresee, but looking from the government's perspective as a way to actually expand the tax base, to actually roll out more benefits towards the other sectors of the economy, not just about property. So we see the balancing act needs to be done rather cautiously.
With all these pressures like trade deals and also this SSD expansion, what are the biggest downside risks or challenges developers and also buyers should watch out for in this RK13 era? And any advice to them in navigating the property landscape in this RK13 plan?
I think the focus with regards to the demand for properties needs to be studied really into better detail. I think the repository, the data repository by the ministries would actually help with a more prudent decision, so that all these targeted endeavors or programs would actually reach the actual target market, the actual need by the people, so that it doesn't go to wastage. So with regards to for the developers, I think cost control measures is actually very important. I think the push for AI and the incentives that actually pushing through with the IBS, new technologies and whatnot, have to really be capitalized and move forward with those kind of models. Perhaps there's some structural models on a base structure that can actually be implemented throughout the country. But on top of that, with regards to the challenges, notwithstanding the external economic uncertainties that we are still facing, we actually still see there's some growth. Even within RMK 13, some areas have actually been highlighted, like the aging nation, the aging society, the market towards those with a better support structure to the caregivers and whatnot. So that there are still areas where niche developments can still move forward, because really Malaysia has a young population, and we still would actually be growing together as the intention from RMK 13.
All right, that was Surveyor Sulaiman Zahid, Director, Research and Consultancy Services, Rahim & Co International, Sdn Bhd. And indeed, RMK 13 is more than just a policy document. It's a blueprint for Malaysia's next chapter. And as we heard from Sulaiman earlier, the property market stands at a crossroads of opportunity and challenge. So whether you're a developer, investor or home buyer, staying informed is key. And we have a lot more update up to this, but let's see this graphic first. Moving on, artificial intelligence is no longer just a buzzword, it's a national priority. As Malaysia sets its sights on becoming an AI nation by 2030, the role of the National AI Office is more critical than ever. So today we're joined by the person leading this transformation. We have Mr. Shamsul Isham Abdul Majid, the head of the National AI Office. He's here with us to unpack Malaysia's AI journey. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, thank you for joining me this morning all the way to studio. Perhaps we could start with, the big picture, because we know as the central coordinating body for Malaysia's AI agenda, could you actually elaborate on how NAIO's specific functions and some concrete steps taken to actually highlight some of the strategic processes so far of AI, please?
Thank you. National AI Office was set up last December. And since then, we've been doing the central coordination of AI policies, governance, and ecosystem development, playing a strategic and pivotal role in making sure that everybody comes together into the national AI ambition. Our specific functions include whole of government alignment to make sure that everybody works under NAIO to coordinate efforts to move forward. Also, we perform a lot of public-private partnership, bringing together industry into conversations with government. Also to make sure that we execute timely the National AI Action Plan and to monitor or perform any course correction when it comes to the National AI Action Plan, and also to promote responsible AI. As we know, this is a very topical question when it comes to ethical use of AI in Malaysia.
The world of AI has become more complex and more dynamic, and it's challenging for us, users to actually understand the whole concept of AI, but it's it helps us with our mundane tasks. So from your perspective, with what is NAIO's top of mind priority to actually translate the national aspiration of becoming an AI nation into a tangible reality?
In the last 6 months, NAIO has been working on developing the National AI Action Plan 2030. And now we are into the mode of execution. When it comes to execution, it is to make sure that we drive purposeful impact to the nation, bringing together the country into an AI state. And this is done via a series of catalytic AI initiatives that's part of a 5-year plan, and this has been echoed within the Rancangan Malaysia 13.
RMK 13. When we talk about RMK 13, it's part of where we say on one of the goals of national aspirations. So could you explain on what is the National AI Action Plan 2030 and why is it considered a bold and also radical strategy under RMK 13, and what makes it different from previous national digital or AI initiatives?
The National AI Action Plan 2030 takes over from the first AI blueprint that was developed by MOSTI, 2021 to 2025. And we're taking it to the next level. It is a call to action, and we consider that to be a whole-of-nation approach, where we invite all sectors to be part of this very clear executive call to make sure that we move ourselves, Malaysia, from an AI consumer nation to an AI creator nation, and therefore we should be able to produce more world-class AI professionals, AI products, and to bring about higher opportunities and income for our country.
Could you actually give some examples, or how are we progressing so far, and how does or will the National AI Plan actually help to improve the lives of everyday Malaysians? Like I mentioned earlier, it helps with my mundane things. So how can we actually explain this plan?
The 3 main things that the AI Action Plan 2030 looks at is, number 1, how do we bring opportunities and career progression for all Malaysians? We call it raising the ceiling, raising the floor, and also good governance. As you mentioned, even for your own self, AI brings a lot of opportunities and efficiency. How do we bring about the same efficiency and opportunity to all Malaysians? This includes people who are at work, future workforce, and students. That's number 1. Number 2 is to also be seen as, Malaysia be seen as a springboard into ASEAN. Having the ecosystem that is conducive and the governance and the regulation in place, people are able to invest into Malaysia and springboard into ASEAN. The third part is to have a government that is powered by AI. So we should see more and more of our government services, the whole of government machinery being more efficient because AI is powering them on a day-to-day basis.
When we talk about AI talent pipeline development as a whole, the Prime Minister has spoken about building a strong AI talent pipeline. So what concrete steps is Malaysia taking right now? Because we see the emergence of AI courses in universities and high institutions. So what can you say about that?
The AI Action Plan 2030 covers from kindergarten all the way to finishing of school and even universities and working professionals. We have action plans that we work together with all ministries, such as Education Ministry for school, in primary school, all the way to secondary school. We are also working together with the Human Resource Ministry and Talent Corp, setting up the National AI Council for Industries, NICI, bringing together captains of industry of all sectors to work on how do we reskill and upskill the existing workforce, and also to align universities and curriculum to make sure that we are all on the trajectory of upskilling and to bring about opportunities that maybe without AI, one is not able to attain, but now with AI, all walks of community are able to move forward.
If I may add before we step into the next question, what could be the challenges when it comes to pursuing this AI action plan, especially towards our youngsters and also the ones on the outskirts that's not on the kawasan bandar, luar bandar lah kita boleh katakan. So what could be the challenges when it comes to them adapting this AI in their daily lives?
It's very important to appreciate that AI is a very fast-moving technology. And because of that, access to such technology now is becoming more easier. It does not mean you must have 5G connection or even Wi-Fi. At times, your simple smartphone is enough for anybody to get access to AI. So access is not an issue, to be honest. But it's the challenge is all about making sure that the AI is being used responsibly. Diguna pakai dengan baik. So this is where AI, National AI Office plays our part, where we put down more governance, more ethical consideration, more publication to help everybody appreciate how do we use AI safely? As you know, when something becomes unsafe, people do not want to use.
Yes.
So even though the benefit is great, but people don't trust anymore. This goes into the conversation of digital trust.
Yes.
And how do we put together enough education, such as we have the Rakyat for Digital portal, where we educate those that are most remote to learn about generative AI, to learn about ChatGPT, and they can earn badges after they have learned something about AI. But it's an ongoing process because we know technology of AI is moving so quickly, and therefore it's not about just harnessing as a user, but also perhaps Malaysia could one day produce world-class AI professionals, world-class AI products that will put Malaysia into that limelight of AI nation seen by other people in the world.
So indeed, digital trust is the key when it comes to when we talk about digital transformation in this current world. But could you briefly share about the ASEAN AI Malaysia Summit 2025, firstly, and the significance of Malaysia hosting this summit, and what message does it send to the whole world?
The ASEAN AI Malaysia Summit is the first for ASEAN hosting a large event such as this. It actually starts this Saturday, where we are going to host Code Fest, a series of hackathon on the first 2 days of Saturday and Sunday. The main event is August 12th and 13th, Tuesday and Wednesday, and it will have generally about 100 speakers, 100 tracks, about 60 speakers, and also delegates coming from countries such as Timor-Leste, ASEAN, and also dialogue partners. We will have announcements, and we will also have exciting keynote speeches by international and local AI experts. But it also will continue on to August 14, Thursday, where we are going to have a series of engagement with a few prominent professors, such as David Shearer from Imperial College and Richard Sterling, and they will bring about a perspective of AI that Malaysia may not have seen. So throughout AI ASEAN Malaysia Summit, we are expecting about 2,000 people starting from Saturday all the way to Thursday. So we are very excited, and we invite all Malaysians to take a ticket or get one of those tickets and see you at MyTech, Jalan Duta on Tuesday.
All right, we have about 2 minutes left. Perhaps we can take this time on as we becoming an AI nation by 2030, and that's 5 years down the road. So anything that you can say to the viewers out there, why AI is important and how AI is important in their next world when it comes to the few years to come?
So AI is an opportunity for everyone, and not to have anybody left behind. So it's a tool that will encourage you to become more efficient, to have more opportunities for greater income. And the AI action plan actually envisages that Malaysia would have a lot more GDP coming in, higher income for all to enjoy, and also position ourselves to be a leader in the technology space. So I encourage everybody, regardless whether you are young and old, or whether you are IT literate or not, to embrace what AI can do, but do it responsibly. Because when it comes to ethics and governance, these are things that we must make sure that we use technology responsibly.
I think that wraps up the whole conversation that we have right now. So that was Mr. Shamsul Izhan Abdul Majid, the head of National AI Office. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights. And I hope this benefits to all users that's watching Niaga AWANI right now. And we have a lot more updates after this with my colleague Ibrahim Sani in the economy.
Ada yang kata ia hanyalah rumput dan garisan putih. Tapi kita tahu ia lebih daripada itu. Di sinilah impian pertama kita bermula. Di sinilah kita pertama kali rebah dan bangkit semula. Di sinilah sorakan pertama bergema. Di sini juga gelanggang keramat, tempat kita berjuang dan pertahankan demi rencana di dada dan semangat yang menyatukan. Ini adalah jiwa kita, dan ia sebenarnya tidak pernah meninggalkan kita. Ini pada kita.
Thanks for joining us. I'm back after a month of hiatus. In my office right now for this show is Yu Ren Chong. The last time I spoke to him was on the steps of the Thames River in London.
That's right.
It's crazy, right? That must be 2000, I don't know, 18? No, cannot. 2020.
2023, I think.
2023.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ren Chong is here to talk about a bunch of stuff. He's the former Deputy Executive Director of the Women's Aid Organization. So what are you up to these days?
I'll do a bunch of things. So I stopped being full-time with WAO in about 2022 when I went over to do a master's degree, and that's why I was in UK at the time when you were there.
You're being humble. You're doing he did his master's degree at Oxford University, right?
That's right. Master's in public policy research.
Sorry, for a moment that you scared me. You don't even remember your master's.
I did too, you see, so I was a bit confused.
Oh my God. The level of humble bragging you're doing is crazy. So, macam mana belajar dekat Oxford? Senang ke, susah ke, best ke, tak best ke?
Senang ke susah? Senang in a way because I felt the student support was quite okay. The community was quite good,
right?
Very strong,
right?
So you get lots of perks and support lah from the university and in particular the department, depending on your department.
Yeah.
But of course challenging because to do any kind of master's degree anywhere, you're sort of, it's different from doing like bachelor's or of course in school where you're much more guided, and this one is you're sort of a bit on your own and you get to figure it out. So.
Yeah. But anyway, the reason why I wanted to have a chat with you is because of the recent talk that you gave at the World Bank event, talking about gender equality, gender studies, some evaluation in terms of how women need to take a step back from the workplace to build a family, and then the re-entrant of them back into the workforce. This is consistent with the work that you did before with the WAO, and of course who you are as a person, because you're rather clued in terms of the equity notion of how we need to build a better workforce. What would be some of the big takeaways that you had from that World Bank report and that World Bank event?
I think the biggest takeaway was two things. So one is we are still grappling with lots of the challenges that the country has been speaking about for 10 years. And biggest of which is this idea of how can we make the workplace, environment, whatever it is, more equitable so that more women can, if they choose to, can work. And I think people are interested in this for many reasons. So from an individual point of view, or even from a family point of view, you're interested in it. Why? Because you want what's the best for yourself. You don't want to be in a situation where, actually, I would like to work in this field, or I would actually like to work, but I can't because of XYZ reasons. And oftentimes it's the wife or the woman who's the one taking a back seat.
Yeah.
So from an individual family point of view, you can see why people will be interested in this question. But really, this challenge really kind of took prominence when the government sort of realized, hey, actually, if we can get more women to work or work more, then that'll benefit the country.
Yeah, the productivity increase.
Exactly, it'll benefit the economy. And then World Bank, many years ago, came up with that stat that was also cited at the event, saying if we can remove all these barriers for women to join the workforce, then the GDP can grow by 26%. And they cited that again. That's an old stat. It's something that World Bank has been saying, since maybe 10 years ago or so. And so that number really, I think, has mengujakan something in the government, and that's why the policymakers are also quite interested in the question. So one of the things that struck me was, these reports that we're doing and so these new studies that are coming out, these are really important. And they also they tell us a bit more fine-grained insights into the problem, but fundamentally we're still kind of grappling with the same issue since many years ago.
And then what I find interesting also is that there is little to no income disparity between the skills being presented at the workforce between men and women in Malaysia, as opposed to other markets where the woman makes 70 cents to the dollar. We don't see that in Malaysia. But we do see the discouragement of women once they leave the workforce to build a family and they re-enter, they lose out to their peers. Unless it's one of the more progressive companies and they allow the women to return back at the similar level of how they left. Now that is worrisome for me. Not so much the income part, but the inability for Malaysian employers or Malaysian workforce or workplace to allow women to come back as is, instead of asking them to regress maybe a few steps back before they took off the maternity leave.
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. So one is, you're right in the sense that the gender pay gap, at least as far as the data that we have, you know, maybe the data could be, who knows? But from the data that we have, it shows that there is a gender wage gap, but it's not, say, as you said, it's not 70% of, it's in terms of women who works versus men who works, the gender wage gap is there, but it's not the biggest challenge, I would say, in this country. Of course, if you're making less than you have a right to be upset. But in terms of what sort of people tend to focus on for Malaysia is this idea of labour force participation. So what does that mean? It means just fewer women of working age. So your adult woman versus adult man, 8 in 10 of those men will be working, whatever job it is. For women, that number is maybe 5 or 6. So 5 or 6 women of working age will be having a formal sector full-time role versus like
sorry, this
men.
is consistent with the 13th Malaysia Plan, where the Prime Minister last week presented at the Parliament that RMK 13 has set women participation of 60% as opposed to 55%. That 5% addition sounds like a big deal, and I think it is. But do you think the reality is as such where it's going to be very hard to implement if done, even if it's done deliberately over the next 5 years?
It will be hard to do, but at the same time, it's definitely not impossible. Reason is, I mean, the simplest counterfactual is sort of, you can imagine, it's like, why other countries, most of them are doing much better than us, and we cannot. It's just something so strange about Malaysia that we cannot reach that level. So we're quite, this 55% labour force participation rate for women is quite low compared to most places so we're among the lowest in that sense. So there's nothing fundamental that we have to be that level. So that in that sense, you could easily imagine a scenario where we are not in that situation, whether the rate be 60, 65, or even lots of countries are at 70. I think that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is that, well, it's not like we aren't making any progress. If you look at this 55 number, it's sort of been hovering around there for the longest time. But at the same time, there are lots of different dynamics going on. So for example, over the past 2-3 decades, more people are having tertiary education. So if you join tertiary education, then you're not going to be in the labor force. So by joining university and not going to work, you're actually bringing that number down. So in that sense, that's not a bad reason for that number to come down. So if you dissect that 55%, you'll see we're improving in some areas, but we're sort of going, the fact that more people are going to university, both men and women, that actually is bringing that number down a little bit. So I mean, the point is, we have been making some progress, small progress, although that 55 number is sort of quite stagnant over the past few years.
The rate of progress is also worrying. It's fine to have progress, but it's not fine if the progress is slow to come.
It's too slow. It's way too slow.
Especially when it comes to our peers. And I'm not just talking about gender equality and equity. I'm also talking about workforce competency, increase of high quality service industry, wage growth, and many more. what worries you right now when it comes to us peer benchmarking in the region, and what would be some of the key areas that you think not just the government sector, but of course the private sector needs to look at quite considerably over the next 5 years, since we're in the mood to talk about, say, RMK 13. This next 5 years, what would be some of the things that you would like to look at?
Yeah. So I think maybe to connect that question with the last question you had and sort of broaden it to say, what can the government or what can we do? You're saying the rate of progress is way too slow, and you're absolutely right. So what we need to do is the government needs to really take bolder steps. You cannot just have status quo kind of, let's give a bit of subsidy here, let's give a bit of tax incentive on hiring here and there. We need a much bigger kind of investment, a much bolder kind of policy decision. So what can we do? So I think one thing that really is going to be fundamental is to say, let's actually subsidize maternity leave. So
are we doing that already?
We are not doing that currently. So the companies pay for maternity leave, basically.
But that's 3 months, some companies 2 months, but most companies 3 months.
Yeah.
Isn't that subsidizing maternity leave?
Well, the government says the companies must pay for maternity leave. So for the individual who is on maternity leave, they are getting some form of pay from the company.
Yeah.
But the company has to pay that cost.
Yeah.
So what happens when a company is trying to say, well, I'm hiring someone who's 25.
Oh, that's active, what do you call this, discrimination, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's not illegal in the country. So say if you are trying to, say you have an interview, you have two candidates. One is a woman, one is a man, both 25 years old, just got married.
Yeah.
You could sit there thinking, wow, if I hire this guy, I only have to pay 7-day paternity leave, so he gets
and what is 7 days, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's 7
days.
As
opposed to 3 months.
Correct. If I hire this person, I have to pay 98 days. So you might think, I'm not saying you'll do that, but like as an employer, that could be going through your mind. And that's wrong, but I mean, you could say that one would tend to think like that. Of course you have to, as a conscientious person, you want to, not do that. But the reality is that may happen, and that does happen. So you're going to have to absorb that cost as a company.
You're suggesting for the government to absorb that cost on behalf of the company?
It doesn't have to be the whole cost, but it could be some kind of subsidy. It could be some kind of mechanism that does. So it could be like a social insurance type thing.
Yeah.
We've introduced EIS and all this stuff. So there could be some kind of social insurance scheme that pays for that. But the point is, if we continue to put the whole burden on companies, that's fine. But at the same time, we are creating this situation where companies have an incentive not to hire women.
I visited my sister in Sweden last month. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, that in the Scandinavian countries, it's 3 months paternity leave as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking, okay, wow.
Yeah.
And then, of course, look, everything is different there. You know what I mean? It's not just about the paternity leave being 3 months. It's about the pay structure. It's about the effective income tax rate, which is 55%.
Yeah.
We're looking at a very broad social insurance network, high level of trust. They don't have to present a medical certificate because the thinking is you're already sick. Now you're forcing that particular sick person to go to the clinic to get a medical certificate to prove to the boss that the person is sick. When in actual sense, if that person is sick, the best thing to do for that person is to just let that person rest and recover. But that would also mean that the employers would trust that employee. I'm calling in sick today because I wanna rest. So everything is different there, and I'm thinking, okay, how long does it take for? I'm not saying that there is the best civilization on the planet,
right?
But it does show some signal that it could be the direction that we want to head into. There is a downside there as well, because productivity is nowhere near our productivity, as in Asia, let alone in Southeast Asia, of course in Malaysia, where our productivity is very high. But we also have to beg the question, what kind of innovative work that can come out from the kind of work that we do here versus that. If you look at those kind of big brands, from Volvo to Scania to Siemens to all of this, It's from there. It's
Right.
not from here.
Right.
The mass production side is here.
Right.
So how do we, if not flip the situation, get more innovation and progress from our workplace? Those are the kind of things that I'm also trying to think about, in the next 4 to 5 years to come.
And just want to pick up on a couple of things you said. So one is, you said paternity leave there is 3 months or whatever it is, quite long.
Yeah.
So that is something that, that could help equalize the situation in Malaysia a bit. So if you just say, I'm not saying we should do this right now.
I see what you mean.
But if you say,
so now that 25-year-old male or female, the same question applies to both anyway.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm not. It will be quite difficult, I think, for us to get there anytime soon. In terms of like, now we just got 7 days a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
To say, we're going to go to 98 days, I think that'll take a few,
But that
a
would
while.
also
But
mean
it
that,
could.
no, the government needs to be bold in taking steps, right?
Why not? Why not? Yeah, why not? If you ask me, why not? But so that's one idea. You equalize the situation, so there will be no discrimination. Of course, companies will be like, So, but if
now I wouldn't hire 25-year-olds at all, huh?
Right? Maybe.
Okay.
But the point is, if you subsidize some of this thing, and starting with maternity leave, because that's what that's where the challenge is. That would be a good first step. And then just going back to the RMK, I think one really very impressive and promising thing that PM announced in RMK plan was saying making preschool compulsory.
Yeah.
Making preschool. So this is something that I think it is in the category of let's make bold steps. Let's take bold steps to kind of help families and help children, education, all that, but also help families. If your child is from age, if you look at it, the situation in Malaysia now, the child starts education at what age? 7. 7. In many countries, it's actually 5 or 4. Primary school for them starts at 5, and maybe some are sort of like pre-primary and compulsory starting when the year you turn 4 is when you go to like primary school or preschool or something like that. So we're sort of like 2-3, 2-year gap between us and lots of other places.
And that's why we finish high school at 18, and most countries they finish high school at 16.
Yes, exactly. And this has been in the news in the last couple of days as well.
And not just that. Sorry, I just want to add on. They feel that their GCE or year 12 is sufficient, so you don't have to do pre-university.
Yeah.
Straight away you do
Exactly.
first year.
Why not? Yeah, exactly.
That is also something that we have to do again, either A-levels or matriculation, which is also puzzling.
Exactly.
I have an 18-year-old daughter. She was like, whatever that I learned in high school, I had to relearn it in my pre-university, and 50% of my first year is the same thing that I've learned for the past 2 years.
Right.
She just finds it very bizarre, this whole process.
Yeah, it is bizarre. And so one thing the government has announced that I think it is a bold policy is that, let's make preschool compulsory. So starting 5. So you're bringing it from the year you turn 7 to the year you turn 5. So that is something that is really interesting of course, from a child development education point of view, but also from a family in the work point of view, because that is a form of childcare almost. So if your child's in preschool, that's the one less thing that as a parent, a working parent, you have to worry about. Of course, there's the years between that, 0 to 4, that is, the biggest challenge. So when your child is born till your child is age 4, what are you going to do there? That's where women sort of drop off and sort of do not really re-enter. But to say let's have preschool 5 to 6 be mandatory, that is a really good step, and hopefully that can sort of be. We want to start thinking about that 0 to 4, maybe not say compulsory, but how can we ensure that all families, if they want their kids to go to, if they want to work and they need someone to take care of their kids, have an option for childcare from 0 to 4. So thinking of things like, hey, Kemas,
what do you call this framework?
Ministry the Ministry of Rural Development, Kemas, they have these very low-cost government-run childcare centres that people can go to. So why not expand this a bit more, or roll out even stronger government subsidies, for example, for childcare, things like that. But I think the idea that preschool is going to become mandatory, that is a big step.
I think all this wraps around the whole idea of the 13th RMK, talking about increasing the Human Development Index, or the HDI, especially in the realm of education, healthcare, and standard of living. And we know that the Human Development Index is looking beyond the measurement of GDP. It looks at the overall progress of the country. We know that it's measured by trying to understand the ability for women participation in the workforce, how early or late the education process starts for a particular citizen. Do you think that these are all heading in the right direction, and it's nice to have in a policy document, but what about execution? Are you worried about that? Because here's something that I picked up yesterday when I attended the tax conference by the Chartered Institute of Tax Conference Malaysia. In China, you have one government, many policies. In stable democracies like the US, you have many governments where you have one policy. For burgeoning or maturing democracies like us, we have many governments, many policies. So in the end, you might not see, 13th Malaysia Plan come to fruition because the new government that might come in just changes everything, and everything is, turned out of whack. Is that a serious concern that you're looking at?
I think the issue of implementation is definitely something that we need to be concerned about. Well, not necessarily concerned, but that needs to be a question that we have in our mind for sure. And not just saying for Malaysia, but most countries, this will be the most developing sort of countries, this will be the case for sure. In terms of the question of government changes and will that sort of put everything into whack, hard to say because we just don't have that much. It happened a few times, but there's COVID and all this, so it's hard to say whether a change in government will necessarily do that. I think the one thing to say about sort of the different actors involved is at a policy level, it's not clear that they will have huge differences. So take the example of preschool. It's not clear to me that, say, so some other government comes in power, they're going to say, hey, we don't like preschool,
and then
scrap it.
Yeah.
So it probably more likely to be like, okay, that seems fine, let's just do it. I mean, they might change a few sort of like...
tweaks.
Yeah, they might tweak things around that, but of course there may be other issues where they, are more sort of value-driven and that they may overturn things like that. But for the most part, these things are sort of things that anyone can agree with. So in that sense, I think it's not so ideological. Of course, the other issue that I sort of think about is sort of just the question of competency. Do we have people who are sort of competent enough and sort of like, interested enough to actually go about doing those things?
Isn't this a chicken and egg argument? Because you want to create competent people, but you're not too sure if you have enough competent people to make other people competent.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So that's the question that does,
like it revolves around your...
Yeah, a bit. And then I think a third consideration I would have is that is the civil service, and I think we do have pretty competent people in the policy-making parts of government. If you look at some of the ministries that will be responsible to implement some of these things, Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economy, or EPU or whatever that thing is, like very competent people. So in that sense, those people or that institution will remain. So that's another plus in our favor. But yeah, it's also up to the people to kind of be like, hey, one thing that I think people need to we need to talk about more is the fact that now in Malaysia, we sort of are a democracy somehow. Before 2018, we had elections and all that, but if you look at this index of like
we have elections and all that, but somehow
we never
we don't feel
exactly we never, the government never changed before 2018. So in that sense, we weren't really a real proven democracy, but now we sort of are. Like
our neighbors down south in a small island.
Yeah, I mean they are democracy, but like it's like if you look at these like political science, will have this index and all that. So if you look at the index for Malaysia, suddenly we're like
and we can change governments and prime ministers peacefully.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just bizarre, right?
Exactly.
I would have never, growing up, there's only one prime minister that I ever know of, right?
Yeah.
My children is like, they lost count on the number of prime ministers that we've had. This is a bizarre moment.
It is bizarre, but that's something else that I think is a tick in our favor, because the government's announced all these things, and all of a sudden your voice matters way more than it
did before. Yeah.
So
just very recently at that, just eight years ago.
Very recently, and so it's up to citizens and it's up to groups, interest groups or NGOs to latch on to all these things. But hey, didn't you say we're doing this? What's going on with this? Let's scrutinize.
Also, more rights to the states as well as the wilayah. That's why Sabah and Sarawak are making bolder requests and asking for the kind of covenant that is contained in the constitution to be honoured.
Yeah. That's part of the.
Do you see this as a weakening of the state or the federation, or do you see this as a strengthening of the nation as a whole?
I mean, I think there are two perspectives on this, right? So one is to say, isn't it better or even fairer if we pool our resources together, so that the central government can then dish it out and give it out. So it's just because your state has X resource, does it mean that you get to keep all of it, or is it fairer to distribute?
I mean, this is called a federation after all.
Yeah, so that's one kind of perspective. But I think for us, there's also an issue of would things just run more smoothly and be more effective if things are a bit more localized? And so not even the state level, but even cities or municipalities or whatever it is, where I think most people would say, well, I'm a bit too centralized in that aspect. So what authority do citizens or penduduk of a city have with regard to their own city, their own sort of municipality, town, or whatever it is? So that is a sort of, I mean, whether anything's going to change in the near term, not sure, but it is something that I think would be of help for us.
So those three considerations that you shared, in terms of the competency of people, the maturing of us becoming as a country in a democracy and so on, do you feel that if I were to ask you just three things, right? Are we heading in the right direction? Are we kind of neutral, or are we heading in the wrong direction? Where do you think we are going at right now?
I think there are two stories again. So the first story is, in general, I would say, maybe I'm a bit of an optimist, but in general, I would say we are.
And that's not a bad thing. Come on, don't apologize for being an optimist.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I would say lots of things are heading in a good direction, I think, and mostly because we see what people call like a democracy backsliding in the world.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't need to give you examples.
Yeah. Of course.
Anyone can imagine that.
Ask 10 people and 11 examples can be given. Yeah.
Yeah. But and in this global context, actually Malaysia is bucking the trend a bit. So we were less democratic 10 years ago than we are now. We're more.
Strange, huh?
Yeah. So in that sense, I'd say Malaysia boleh lah. We're sort of in that sense we're good. And if you just look at how vibrant the discourse is, it's. I mean, I can barely remember. It's just a different world. Thinking 15 years ago, even 10 years ago was just a different world.
Yeah, Malaysia 2015, versus Malaysia 2025.
Yeah, people take things like we have
freedom of press. The freedom of press is very, very.
Here we are talking about whatever it is. This 15 years ago probably this wouldn't be possible. So I think that, in a sense, that really is a bright spot for me. So that's kind of one thing, and if you can look at lots of other indicators where we're moving in the right direction in terms of policies and all that. What I am concerned about is sort of like treatment of minorities or sort of certain subset of issues that are deemed a bit sort of not what the mainstream people kind of agree with. In those areas, I think we're kind of going into more dangerous territory, I would say.
Got it. Final word. What do you intend to do for the rest of the year? What are the things that you're up to? Some of the projects that you want to share with us?
Well, I would say maybe if I can focus on one thing. So there has been some. So in addition to some of the other work that I'm doing, I'm also a part of this tribunal called the Anti-Sexual Harassment Tribunal, or Tribunal Anti-Gangguan Sexual. And this is a tribunal that the government set up to hear complaints about sexual harassment. So when we talk about kind of like workplace and economy and all that, one sort of important thing to talk about also is like people's well-being at work. So if people are not in an work environment that they're comfortable and that they can sort of thrive and they feel safe and they feel, you know, unbothered, then that's going to affect, of course, their well-being, but of course, productivity and so on. So sexual harassment is actually a big problem in that regard. And you know, you can look at different prevalence studies and all this. So it's quite a big problem in Malaysia, sexual harassment. I mean, everywhere it is, but in particular Malaysia, lots of mostly women do face sexual harassment at work and in other places. So one thing that NGOs and policymakers sort of got together and said, let's, you know, do something about this, is to create policies around sexual harassment. And one of these policies is the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, which created this tribunal. So what is the tribunal? Basically, if you have experienced sexual harassment at work or anywhere, but even if it is at work or in a workplace setting, you can actually make a complaint to this tribunal. And the tribunal will then, you don't need a lawyer, you just pay 30 ringgit as a filing fee. How do you make a report? You go to the Ministry of Women's office, or you can call them, Talian Kasih 15999. No lawyers, just, you know, within 60 days your case will be finished. There'll be a panel of 3 persons hearing your case. One of the persons must be a woman, so there'll be some gender balance within your panel. And the panel or the tribunal wouldn't really care who is the accused person. So you might think, if you're in a company and maybe your manager or supervisor or even the owner of the company or whatever it is the one you're accusing, you might feel like, oh, a bit challenging like this. I mean, you can try, but you know, but the tribunal wouldn't really care who they are. It's just, did this thing happen and what should you do about it? That's sort of the thing. So that's, I guess, one thing that I would sort of put out there to say that, you know, if you all are, anyone is experiencing sexual harassment, you can look into this thing called the Anti-Sexual Harassment Tribunal, and you can bring your case to the tribunal to hear and to decide upon.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting conversation to be had. You, Ren Chong, long-time friend, maybe we can do this a lot more frequent.
Sure.
Instead of once every 3 years or something.
Sure.
If you missed out any part of this interview, just head on to astro.com, find out more information there. Catch you in the next one.
Dibawakan oleh penaja utama jelajah jiwa SME, Unified Business, rakan digital pilihan anda.